to power. At the time, but
this is part 2 of the Bush crime family 3 generations of treason video. All of this bit is new. None of it has been heard by the public before. This is Butler and the running of the wars.
Hitler, a staunch defender of democracy, went along with the plan, but he was secretly appalled.
So that's why when we were making movies in Hollywood, Rhett Butler was playing the role of the man who was having to live with the concept that the war was going to end civilization. I forget what the movie was called. That is, it was not 39 Steps this time, it was the no, I've forgotten that one. It will come back in the course of time.
Inside the National Archives, I was joined by writer John Buchanan, who has made a study of right-wing America in the 1930s.
These super wealthy capitalists essentially wanted to pose such a threat to Roosevelt that he would basically step aside. If FDR would not cooperate and step aside, they would execute him. Kill him.
Smedley Butler's testimony shows the plot was at an advanced stage.
McGuire said to me, I went abroad to study the part that the veterans play in the various setups of the governments that they have abroad, like France. And I found just exactly the organization we're going to have. It is an organization of 500,000 super soldiers here in America. Well, I said, I suppose you get these 500,000 men in America. What are you going to do with them? He said, did it ever occur to you that the president is overworked? We might have an assistant president. He went on to say that the position would be a secretary of general affairs, a sort of super secretary. He said, you know the American people will swallow that. We have got the newspapers. We will start a campaign that the president's health is failing. Everybody can tell that by looking at him. And the dumb American people will fall for it in a second.
Now in his 90s, Jules Archer was a young man of 18 when General Smedley Butler gave his testimony. He remembers just how idolized the man still was by the tens of thousands of veterans who'd been under his command.
He was a fantastic anti-war general. He was very popular with the soldiers and sailors. He fought for them, and he fought for their rights. That was one of the reasons he was selected for the plot, because they knew he could raise a paramilitary army of veterans who would follow him because they believed in him.
It was here at the Association of the Bar in central New York City, just a stone's throw from Wall Street, that the case against the plotters came to a head.
One of the most important witnesses who came here was Paul Cumley French, a journalist Smedley Butler took into his confidence after the conspirators had tried to recruit him. French had also met Chief Plot
Chumley Warner, do you get it? Everything is an obfuscation.
Gerald Maguire at his Wall Street offices, and he recounted their conversation to the committee.
We need a fascist government in this country, he insisted, to save the nation from the communists who want to tear it down and wreck all that we have built in America. The only men who have the patriotism to do it are the soldiers, and Smedley Butler is the ideal leader. He could organize 1 million men overnight. During the course of the conversation, he continually discussed the need of a man on a white horse, as he called it, a dictator who would come galloping.
So remember that Donald Trump, who's the boss at Exxon Mobil, was a draft dodger in Vietnam. He never went there. Bad feet for the Piso family. Pie, pie, piggy, toes right through world history, all of the stories are the same.
In on his white horse, he said that was the only way to save the capitalistic...
So that's the deathly white horse in Revelation. In Revelations, in the Bible, for Shania Twain, one of the world's billionaires. Vast tracts of New Zealand gifted to her by the corrupted president that was Helen Clark, who then became the NZ representative on the United Nations panels. Yeah, vast tracts of land to Shania Twain. Yeah, and all of them contract diseases. Shania's got Lyme disease, which made her lose her voice for a decade. Yeah, and that is Roosevelt, the much parodied joke here, that is Delaney's donkey in the songs by Duncan. Yeah, that's the cover for Val Duncan at Rio Tinto for Rothschild.
system.
But it was Smedley Butler, war hero and soldier's friend, who exposed the plot. He continued his meetings with Maguire until he gathered enough information on the plotters to bring the evidence before the McCormack-Dickstein Committee.
And that's Maguire, who's just bailed out of here and the making of my videos. Yeah, after I'm the person that releases all of the information and his training in the places that are in the Chipping Norton Sets range. Yeah, and he's a dead ringer, I'll tell you now, he's a dead ringer for the abdicated king. Yeah, I've got all the evidence wrapped up, all the images wrapped up, and all of them are pretenders to be activists. Yeah, that is John Patterson, whose family launched the Bank of England. That is Field McConnell, related to the families that are the female members of the Duke of Wellington's family, and they're actually Austrians, and they're von Wellesley of that place, like Theresa von Brazier.
And the central character of the plot, the plain-speaking Major General Smedley Butler, was caught on early newsreel from the time, explaining his part in exposing the plot.
I talked with an investigator for this committee. He told me they had unearthed evidence linking my name with several such veteran organizations. As it then seemed to me to be getting serious, I felt it was my duty to tell all I knew of such activities to this committee. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions.
So Smedley Butler remained adamant that he was the target of a fascist plot, and there was never any doubt either.
Gone with the Wind was Rhett Butler's role. Yeah, and it's still the divided North and South. Yeah, that Andrew Jackson and all of those people were forced to live with because they could not have a United Kingdom like we had, and all of the money for the United Kingdom that we had and have still got gives us the Parliament that is now the set of buffoons that are incapable of making decisions because of all of their massive mafia operations globally that include the running of the police, even although everybody now knows the story. Yeah, that's Lord Condon, the billionaire from the London Olympic scam.
In the mind of committee chairman John McCormack, that the forces of fascism were gathering to storm the White House. But who was going to fund the coup? Even with the backing of 500,000 veterans, a plot of this sort against the most powerful government on earth needs money as well as muscle, and an awful lot of it too. Well, according to Smedley Butler, this was where the big business moguls and Wall Street brokers behind the coup came in. They, he was told by Maguire, would soon step out of the shadows in the form of a newly created lobby group. Soon after he made this promise to Butler, the American Liberty League was born.
Maguire said, well, you're going to see in the next few weeks in the press, this organization is going to be created that's going to front for the whole thing, and we're going to stand up for the Constitution, and we're going to stand up for our troops and so on. And lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, it splashed all over the major newspapers of the time, especially in New York and Washington, the creation of the American Liberty League.
It's a matter of record that the membership of the American Liberty League included some of the most famous names in business. Its benefactors read like a who's who of household products that are still familiar today. General Foods, the makers of
So that is Giselle Maxwell is the lover of Epstein. She's the one who arranges the little girls to go and get shagged by him. Yeah, all of it is the same stories. All of them are false stories, and that is why Robert Maxwell had to jump off the back of a boat. Yeah, like Epstein. Yeah, suicided on the end of a rope. No one can know whether it's true, and all of it is covered by doppelgangers using the methods that the Rothschilds have developed ever since they sent all of the world leaders into the great conflicts, yeah, as their bastards.
Maxwell House Coffee, Bird's Eye and Colgate, Heinz Foods, US Steel and Carman.
Cold, you get it? The Chancellor. All of them are on the rich list like Heinz. All of them are the cousins of Donald out of the Alsace and the Palatinate. And they're the cousins of Hillary as well. Both of them are descended from John of Gaunt in Lancashire.
Manufacturer General Motors were all supporters of the League. The treasurer of this organisation was the broker Grayson Murphy. Little research has revealed that he was none other than the boss of the man at the centre of the plot allegations, Gerald Maguire. Later in the McCormack-Dickstein report, a shipping company called Hamburg America Line was accused of providing free passage to Germany to American journalists willing to write favourable copy on Hitler's rise to power.
So that's Jacob Schiff, and all of the Federal Reserve plotters came across from Nazi land, like the Bushes did in 1937, called Scherf or Worcester, and all of the names that are now infamous because of that Worcester diaspora. Yeah, and some are going in the other direction, and that is the Colditz families into Australia with all of those hopeless actors and actresses. Another name that I've forgotten. Yeah, and
the company is also alleged to have brought Nazi spies and pro-fascist sympathisers into America. John Buchanan has studied this later section of the report and has discovered that one of the company's managers came from a very famous family.
The thing that surprised me most was to discover in the documents that this company, Hamburg America Lines, had in fact been managed on the U.S. side at the executive level by Prescott Bush as part of a web of Nazi business interests.
So Onassis had his own fleet, yeah, and the Pizos have their own fleet. That is the P&O shipping line, with George Bush on the directorates, with the Milnes of the local region on the directorates, married to the Duke of Roxburgh, who passed on only 3 weeks ago.
That were all seized in late 1942 under the Trading with the Enemy Act by the U.S. Congress, and Prescott Bush is the grandfather of the sitting President of the United States.
Of course.
And what you've got to realise, which they never tell you if they're Alex Jones-like people, they never tell you that all of them, like Alex Jones, are on those ancient family trees out of ancient Italy, yeah, like the ones that we've heard of out of Poland that are Tusk. And the Tuscaland, I forget what the aristocratic names are in Poland, in that region. Yeah, all of them are the magnates and the bankers, like the Vatican were in the earliest scams.
At the time, it was perfectly legal to have dealings with Hitler's Germany. Prescott Bush was not called to account for this until America entered the war. Neither was it a crime to be a member of a lobby group like the Liberty League, and I found no firm evidence that the Liberty League itself was behind the plot to overthrow their country's democratically elected president. But academics like Professor Tony Badger believes that it was at the very...
They never mention the fact that the Rothschilds warned all of these politicians that unless they go to war, yeah, they will have a terrible war on their land that they will not be able to fund for geopolitical mastery reasons.
At least a magnet for those with such intentions. But yet again, the evidence is hard to find. You'd have thought that if there was any linking leading American industrialists of the day to a plot against the president, I'd be able to find it at the National Archives in Washington. Yet when John Buchanan and I leafed through the rather thin files there, we found no direct reference to any of these people. Though I'm now starting to wonder whether any such evidence has been removed or deliberately withheld from the records in the first place. General Butler seemed to have harboured similar suspicions. After the investigating committee published its findings, he accused its members of deliberately editing out of his testimony the names of top business people who he had linked to the plot.
Remember that the killing of John F. Kennedy was then looked into by the CIA, led by his assassins, the Bush family. None of it is mentioned. That is the same time as they've tokenistically mentioned Latin America, yeah, and all of the people, the places where they were going to create fascist governments right in the middle of the war. That is the takeover of those places and the killing of all of the people that did not want a military regime to be in charge of their country, and those were lined up in the stadia and shot dead. And the Bushes were in charge of that, not a mention.
On the 17th of February 1935, just after the committee had published its findings, he had this to say on radio WCAU.
Like most committees, it has slaughtered the little and allowed the big to escape. The big shots weren't even called to testify. They were all mentioned in the testimony. Why was all mention of these names suppressed from the testimony?
The co-chairman, Samuel Dickstein, admits that the papers were censored, but insisted that this was for a very good reason.
The testimony given...
So do you get it? That's the Steens in the banking syndicate with the Dietrich tribes that is of the Alps, that is Rockefeller, Trump-Heller, and Alsace for Jim Fetzer, who's not allowed now to go on Facebook in case he makes a mistake that will cost Donald the capacity to take over the world as a draft dodger and the owner of one of the big four oil companies that was scammed out of America by Bush.
By General Butler was kept confidential until such time as the names of the persons who were mentioned could be checked upon and verified. This accounts for the fact that when the results of the hearings were made public, References were omitted.
That argument would have seemed fair enough if names had later been checked and verified. Yet most of the senior figures implicated in General Smedley Butler's evidence were never asked to appear before the committee to answer the questions raised. Even though, had the allegations against them been found to be true, people like Irene DuPont and banker J.P. Morgan.
So this is the Illuminati now, where that is the residence of all of the evil in world history. Yeah? That's Morgan, who was not even deputy president. He took command as they killed his predecessor in the intensive care unit in the hospital. And I think that was a Monroe, actually. And poor Marilyn, she gets the same.
Could have faced a death sentence for treason.
The investigations mysteriously turn to vapor when it comes time to call them to testify. FDR's main interest was getting the New Deal passed. And so he struck a deal in which it was agreed that the plotters would walk free if Wall Street would back off of their opposition to the New Deal and let FDR do what he wanted.
John Buchanan. With their cover blown, it seems likely that the plotters and their wealthy backers had little option but to accept such a deal and return to the business they knew best, making money.
There were little warning signs, but few were paying attention when George H.W. Bush, the puppy, ran for president in 1988 and 1992. First, during the campaign, it surfaced at one of his campaign.
So not a mention of their corruption and their stealing of the patents that were filed by Tesla. Yeah, and I've shown you the importance of the patents bit at the beginning of video number 1 on this. Yeah, none of it is coming out. It's just a miniature profiling of what they've done and how all of the people around them are still connected with Germany, Brown Brothers Harriman, the Brown universities all across America, and the Faust families that were the European monarchs, yeah, that were descended from Marcus Aurelius. Faust and Faustinas, that is the launch of the devil into their stories, and that is Drew Faust, who was the boss at Harvard University before I released her genealogical secrets, descending back to her ancestors being Faust and Faustina, who were the children and the wives of Marcus Aurelius. And that becomes the devil in the stories out of Germany as they demonize everything and make everybody pretend that their nation is in a depression with all of the gold bricks, yeah, from World War I still in Fort Knox. Yeah, and World War I for America was only 2 years because they entered it in the middle using the Freemasonic scam that I told you about. There were only 3 senators in the White House that afternoon because it was Christmas Eve and everybody had gone home to have a good time, which is the whole of their lives for the monarch that is the Queen of England and for them, the 5th cousins of Queen Victoria.
Staffers was a distributor of pro-Nazi propaganda. Before the ink was dry on the individual's resignation, further revelations showed there were in fact a number of ex-Nazis on Bush's campaign staff, including Laszlo Pastor and Jaroslav Stetsko. Pastor was a member of the Hungarian Arrow Cross during World War II and served as an envoy to Germany. The Arrow Cross was known to be excessively brutal even to their Nazi allies. Stetsko served as the prime minister of the short-lived Ukrainian puppet government. During the short reign of this puppet regime, over 100,000 Jews were slaughtered in Lvov. George H.W. Bush's insensitivity towards victims of the Holocaust is underlined by his employment of Fred Mahler, a well-known collaborator with former Nazis in both his presidential campaigns. Upon winning the presidential race, George H.W. Bush, the puppy placed his assets in a blind trust headed by his close friend William Stamps Farish III.
There we are. Yeah, the man that is the friend of the Queen of England because it gets her a piece of the war crimes action. Yeah, every time she goes to America, she goes to visit him. And that is the launch of the fucking Jumanji film and the whole of the European and American lies that are told to cover the real history of these ruthless families.
That appointment should have triggered alarm bells that something very dark and sinister is buried in the Bush family's past. His grandfather, William Stamps Farish, sold the Japanese the gasoline used in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Like what?
So that's Farish, not Farish, like the parish joke for the owners of the Jumanji house. Yeah, that is Jumanji's, the cathedral on the Norman coast, near Perch, where Percy used to live before they took over the whole of Britain in the Doomsday Book Conquest. And they are murderous neighbours in Northumberland because they're the dukes and duchesses of Northumberland, and their elder brother is no longer with us because he was entitled to their title. And that is the truck where the Mannerheim Agreement was signed with Hitler and Mannerheim, and that is outside Morpeth in Percy territory.
The elder Farish supplied Hitler's war machine with oil and tetraethyl lead. George H.W. Bush's father, Prescott, was close friends with the elder Farish and remained so even after the elder's testimony before Congress provoked Harry Truman to cry out, "This is treason." In fact, during the...
So no mention of Rothschild or of Rodenroth, Clinton, and any of the deals that that man engaged in so that they could partition Palestine and turn the Rothschild hexagram dripping with blood to blue for the Israeli families that are actually run by Ashkenazi Jews east of the Black Sea. That's Rothschild. Never get a mention, because it's really dangerous to tell them that they are war criminals. And I've been doing it now for 6 or 7 years, and nothing has happened, but they will do it if I continue. Yeah, that is them marrying into the British monarchy, and that is the reason that Greg Hallett could not publish the book, How to Take Over the World, a Right Royal Con, naming and picturing all of the children that were bastards of Rothschild and Churchill and all of the in-betweens that are Pamela Digby Churchill and the parents of Bill Clinton, who's the half-cousin of the Queen.
War. Prescott had 3 companies seized from him for trading with the Nazis. To understand the web of intrigue and follow the money from the Holocaust to the Bush family, we need to start with the period immediately surrounding World War I. By 1916, August Thyssen could see that Germany had already lost the Great War and he needed to protect his fortune. His eldest son had been groomed to run the family steel business in the Ruhr. His second son, Heinrich, discreetly changed his citizenship from German to Hungarian and married the Hungarian aristocrat Baroness Margaret Bornemisza de Caution.
That is the Forbes rich list again. That is born leisure of Austria that are Butlins. Yeah? That is the Harris family, and all of it is the Aryan master race that proclaim that they rule the world and use the pyramid as their icon. Yeah? Bornemisza is one of the richest, and that is the family tree that then allows them to become advisors to Pope Benedict, who's on the Committee of 300 as one of the richest people in the world, like the Queen of England and 11 of her relatives. Poor Fergie.
Near the end of the war, August Thyssen opened the Bank voor Handel en Schevaart in Rotterdam. Holland was a neutral country during the war, and the new bank would serve as the perfect location to launder funds from the Thyssen Bank in Berlin and protect his fortune from allied financial demands. At the end of the war, Heinrich, now going by the name of Baron Thyssen Bornemische de Caution, moved to Rotterdam.
The mountain from the molehill that is conveniently 30 degrees for the world's Masonic slaves. Every bank in London is a Masonic lodge.
And became the principal owner of the Bank voor Handel en Schevaart. All that remained to be done in August Thyssen's plan was to set up an American bank. In 19...
Krups, do you get it? They were based in Baroness Blackstone's the estuary of the River Thames, right up to 2 weeks of the breakout of World War I. Yeah, and they're trading with the enemy right through both of the wars. And that is Kaiser Bill's launch pad as the boss at Krups.
1922, Averell Harriman traveled to Germany to set up a branch of W.A. Harriman in Berlin. Harriman had hired George Herbert Walker, George H.W. Bush's grandfather, to run both the New York and Berlin branches of his expanding investment firm. During his stay in Germany, Harriman had met the Thyssen family and agreed to help the Thyssen set up an American bank.
So that is Thyssen. They're related to Dyson, who invented the Hoover, and on it goes. And that's Bill Gates is Gottsheim, yeah, and he's the little goat herd in the Sound of Music film. Yeah, and Mary Schicklgruber is the actual person that is the parent of Hitler.
In 1923, Germany was in economic shambles, and Thyssen met with his friend General Ludendorff, who advised him that Germany's hope lied with Hitler and the Nazi Party. Thyssen soon became a financial backer of the Nazis and Hitler. Early in 1924, Hendrik J. Kuenhoven, the managing director of Bank voor Handel en Schevaart, traveled to New York, meeting with Walker and the Harriman brothers.
So I think that's the one that survived as the boss of Harriman Companies, and he was a major figure in New York in the 1960s, and in the end he was able to marry the mother or the grandmother of Bill Clinton, that is Pamela Digby Churchill. She has an amazing story, and they may just be body doubles, but she was the ambassador in France before she married into that bloodline, and I think she's now passed on, but they've still got relatives living just outside Kelso in a tiny village called Roxborough, and she used to come and give me books on spying. If it is really Bill Clinton's mother, she has an amazingly beautiful profile, even although she must be as old as the hills.
They founded the Union Banking Corporation. In 1926, August Thyssen died. The eldest son, Fritz, expanded the Thyssen empire by creating United Steel Works. Thyssen also brought Frederick Flick on board. The Thyssen-Flick Union was designed to suppress the union movement. As a result of the merger of Thyssen and Flick, George Walker hired his son-in-law, Prescott Bush, to manage the United Steel Works account. One division of United Steel Works consisted of both Consolidated Silesian Steel Corporation.
So not a mention of the secret societies that are the skull and bones that unite all of the countries, like the Masons do all over the world in their warmongering plans. Rothschild.
And the Upper Silesian Coal and Steel Company. Both were located in the mineral-rich Silesian area of Poland. The arrangement was extremely profitable for all four men: Thyssen, Flick, Walker, and Bush, until the Depression started in 1929. Congressional investigations after the war showed that United Steel had supplied 50.8% of the pig iron of Nazi Germany, and likewise was a major supplier of all other ferrous-based metal products needed by Hitler's war machine. Hence, one of the largest munitions makers in Nazi Germany was funded by Prescott Bush, the father and grandfather of two future U.S. presidents. Due to the Depression, Harriman merged with Brown, forming the Brown Brothers and Harriman firm. Internally, the stock of Consolidated Silesian Steel Company was held by the Harriman 15 Corporation, formed by Harriman and Bush. 2/3 of the stock was owned by Flick. By 1934, with Hitler in solid control of Germany, the profits from the Thyssen-Flick union soared to over 100 million. Both Union Bank and the Bank for Handel and Schifart were overflowing with money. Prescott Bush became managing director of Union Bank and took over the day-to-day operations of the German plan. In 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland, ending a dispute over taxes between Consolidated and the Polish government. The Nazis' original plan was to replace the workers in Polish factories with Soviet prisoners. However, that portion of the Hitler-Stalin agreement was never implemented. Consolidated Silesian Steel Corporation was located near the Polish town of Ossiesim. When the plan to use Soviet prisoners as forced labor fell through, the Nazis began shipping Jews, communists, gypsies, and other minority populations to the camp the Nazis had set up. This was the beginning of Auschwitz. The reason Auschwitz was located there was because of the abundant supply.
So America is now in a position to do that to its citizens, yeah, but it will not let the people that used to own that land across the border, which is why Donald is building the wall.
Supplies of coal which could be processed into aviation fuel. I.G. Farben soon built a plant near Auschwitz to take advantage of not only of the nearby coal deposits but also of the slave labor supply available at Auschwitz. According to a Dutch intelligence agent, Prescott Bush managed a portion of the slave labor force in Poland. Thyssen and Flick sold Consolidated Steel to UBC. Under the complete control of Harriman and Bush's management, the company became Silesian American Corporation, which became part of UBC and Harriman's portfolio of 15 corporations.
So that's Silesia and Lithuania, and that is another two members of the Committee of 300 that are false socialists, that are Miliband. Yeah, all of them paid out of the Rothschild war chest.
As the 1930s progressed and it became clear that war was imminent, Bush and Harriman hired the Dulles brothers to conceal the Nazi money and ownership in Union Bank. In concealing the involvement of the Nazis in Union Bank, Prescott Bush and Harriman undoubtedly knew that they were already engaged in an activity that was probably illegal and certainly not in the best of interests of their country.
So that is the Xyclon production units. Yeah, and this is just a tiny part of the story. That is the gases that they can kill millions of people with. And that actually used to happen in Hertfordshire. And those gases were used in the Japanese terror attacks. And now Japan and China and the whole of Asia is being misled into its rioting again by the richest people in the world that are in the Chinese Chiang Kai-shek Rothschild descendant syndicates that are all profiled like Obama and the American presidents on the top 100 most influential people in the world, published by Forbes. Yeah, everything is the pyramid.
Once war broke out, however, Bush's activities on the behalf of the Nazis
or the mountain from the Christian molehill
through Union banking became tantamount to treason. The reader should understand that the concealing of Nazis' assets located in the United States through a maze of corporate shells often based in Switzerland was an integral part of the German battle plan. In fact, the Nazi had a word for it, tarnum, or to camouflage. The primary aim of these concealed Nazi corporations was to wage economic warfare by creating production bottlenecks for their adversary. The reader should also be aware that 2 Americans were present during the secret meeting of the German elite that brought Hitler to power. Those 2 Americans were John Foster and Allen Dulles, 2 of the directors of...
So that's the Dulles family that were in charge of the Boston place where John F. Kennedy had his head blown to bits. They would not travel in the same car.
Of Union Banking Groninger and Kuhlenhoven were Nazi directors of the Bank for Handel and Schiffer, formerly the von Haidt Bank. Von Haidt was also a Nazi and has been identified as the intermediary between the Garami Trust and Adolf Hitler. Both Groninger and Kuhlenhoven contributed lavishly to Himmler's circle of friends. There were over 40 firms around Auschwitz using slave labor from the death camp. Soon the Nazis had a massive store of gold from dental fillings, glasses, and jewelry. The Nazis extracted the fillings of its victims after being informed by Degussa that the company could refine it into marketable gold bullion. Degussa was awarded an exclusive contract with the Nazis to refine all gold. The company was also joint owners with I.G. Farben of Dagesh.
This is them. This is the gas story. It's absolutely horrendous.
Firm that produced Xyclon B cyanide tablets used in the gas chambers. Due to the hoard of gold fillings stacking up at Auschwitz, Degussa built a smelter there. The bullion was then shipped back to Berlin and commingled with the Nazis' gold stash. Undoubtedly, some of it made its way back to the banker in charge of United Steel Works, Prescott Bush. October 20th, 1942, the United States government seized Union Banking under the Trading with the Enemy Act. During that summer, the New York Tribune had exposed Bush and Thyssen, whom it called Hitler's angel. Union Bank's books revealed a myriad of Nazi money and holding companies. Officials realized they had only scratched the tip of the iceberg. On November 17, 1942, the government seized Silesian American Corporation and placed its operation under the Government Alien Property Custodian Office. Following the war, authorities seeking to locate the Dutch royal family's jewelry discovered the transaction papers of the Silesian American Corporation in the books of Bank for Handel and Schiffer. The bank manager, H.J. Kaunhoven, came under intense scrutiny and was shocked by the discovery. Soon Kaunhoven traveled to New York to inform Prescott Bush. Dutch authorities date the meeting as soon after Christmas 1947. 2 weeks later, the otherwise healthy Dutch banker died of a heart attack. Coincidentally, this was the method of choice of the Gehlen network for liquidating people. The Nazis had perfected a method of inducing heart attacks that autopsies could not detect. On February 8, 1951, Thyssen died in Argentina. Following his death, the alien property custodian released the assets of the Union Banking Corporation to Brown Brothers Harriman. The remaining shareholders quietly cashed in their remaining shares. Prescott Bush received $1.5 million for his share in Union Banking's blood money. This brief article has only scratched the surface of the sordid association of Prescott Bush with the Nazis, as he had yet a third company seized from him during the war. In his first run for senator, Prescott was defeated after his position within the eugenics movement was disclosed. George the Puppy has followed in his father's footsteps and retained many of the same family connections with the Nazis. For instance, as chairman of the Republican Party, he presided over...
So that's George the Puppy from ancient Rome, descended from Poppaea, who was the husband of Nero, who was murdered by Piso, which is the naming of the global police for 2,000 years.
For the formation of the ethnic heritage groups of the Republican Party. This was a reward for the Nazi quislings from Eastern Europe for helping in the election of Nixon as president. When 2 or more ethnic groups were vying for control over a particular group, invariably the group with close ties to the Nazis won out. George also shows the same intense interest in population control. Perhaps it was for his beliefs in eugenics. George appointed General William Draper as his expert on population. Or perhaps it was more of a reward for past services rendered by Draper to the Bush family. Draper was the former general placed in control of the military government's economic division after the war. Draper was a rabid racist and member of the Eugenics Society. He was also a former employee of Dillon & Reed, the large Wall Street brokerage house that floated the largest German bond offerings, including one for United Steel Works. In his position as economic czar of Germany, he stopped the dismantling of an IG Farben plant and was in the ideal slot to protect his former clients that armed Hitler, including Bush. The IG Farben head office was later turned into the CIA's European headquarters. The American government continued to blackmail most West German politicians.
And they were the bosses. 2 generations of them, one with Poppy as his middle name. Stiff-tongued, you get it, for the Hohenzollern icons that are Kaiser bills, and all of them are in the same lethal families.
Throughout the Cold War based upon their denazified pasts.
Thyssen.
And Americans, I think, in the 30s cared more about security than they did about democracy. And so if a group of businessmen, with the help of some people, former military people or current military people, could have fairly quickly brought the economy back, created the sense of security, then yes, it is possible that they would have got some popular support.
America would have become a dictatorship. Democracy would be gone. America would have joined Hitler and Mussolini as a fascist triumvirate.
Perhaps the biggest remaining question is whether, had the coup gone ahead and been successful, the American people would ever have put up with a dictator in the White House.
It's critical that every citizen of this country rise up and do something, because the day of reckoning is at hand, and these people are Nazis. They are practicing Nazi philosophy. They are mimicking Nazi tactics. And
Trump is at least as bad and at least as evil. All of it premeditated. The picking of every president around the world is nothing to do with democracy. It's a Freemasonic lodge decision by the chief master masons, with their slaves having to pay to have the right to put their hand up in the Parliament on Christmas Day when all the rest of the Freemasons are on holiday.
time is running out.
God bless you, and may God bless America.
Right then, signing off. Poor Fergie. Yeah, she's the only one of the British royal family. Even although she's divorced, she does not get to go to sex islands and things like her former husband, but she's the only one of the sad bastards that is not on the committee of 300, soaking up all of the world's wealth. Yeah, and there is John F. Kennedy just before they blew his head to bits. And there is the successor that is from the Palatinate in Germany, with the massive links to the River Rhine and the Alsatian regions, and the links to all of those Trump-Heller, Rodenroth families that are Hillary Clinton's founding. Yeah, it's totally corrupted, and he's the only one that tried to change it for the better. And Dulles was the man that you just heard about, that was the MP or the senator for that region in America. The same week, all the books in the libraries were burnt, and this week they have taken down the videos of the Boston terror from the front page of my Facebook pages, because they think it's horrendous that they can fake up something like that, that a man can have the two of his legs blown off and still be conversing with the people that are pushing his wheelchair. Yeah, all of them are Muppets, and it's a plan to take over the world, run by the world's most silent war criminals, who are Rothschild, and they own the whole show. And they pick weak and feeble presidents like FDR so that they will endorse their policies entirely, and no one will challenge them unless they're the Russian Tsars that wanted to keep their central banks, and they trained Stalin in London to get rid of them, and that is Stalin that is now related to Jeff Bezos. Stalin's dad was Crazy Bezos. All of it published by the Montefiore team that are on the boards for Rothschild and all of the other families that are his. Yeah? Fifth cousin, thanks to Mrs. Simpson of Queen Vic. Yeah, like the Bushes. Out of Germany, the whole fucking lot of them. Oh, I don't know about her. Oh no, she's Argentinian, I think. Or her husband was. No, her dad was Argentinian, polo playing material. And there is another one from the bloodline. Trouble getting up the stairs in Scotland now. Bye-bye.